how can we get rid of our abdominal fat? If you are struggling with additional belly fat for long, this video is for you. All the methods I will talk about today are grounded in science, so this will be a video that will list methods that are proven, safe, and those that really work. I have divided the video into 4 sections. 1. Lifestyle and obesity. 2. What happens when we have additional body fat? 3. How to get rid of abdominal obesity. 4. How to eat. As for today's guidelines and video, I advise you to take it really seriously because abdominal obesity, although ignored by most people, is extremely dangerous to our health. However, you're here on the Doctor's Notes channel. It means you've come to a reliable source of knowledge about human health and want to take better care of yourself and your loved ones. Don't hesitate to subscribe for more content and leave a like and comment. It's the only way you let YouTube know that this is valuable content. Thanks. 1. Lifestyle and general obesity. Stress. Cortisol, popularly known as the stress hormone, contributes to the development of general and abdominal obesity, as well as makes it difficult for us to return to an appropriate weight. Cortisol literally affects how fat is deposited in our bodies. This one hormone has such a pervasive effect on our lives that it's worth learning how to avoid it for more than just obesity's sake. How to avoid it? First, put yourself on an anti-inflammatory diet. That is, one with severely limited sugars. I'll discuss this in more detail a little later in the video, but it's worth remembering that inflammatory processes in the body increase cortisol levels. Second, try to maintain a mild feeling of hunger. This will be easier for those who opt for intermittent fasting, but it speaks for itself. Always get up from the table a little under-eaten, and above all, avoid overeating violently. Thirdly, rest after exercise will strongly reduce cortisol levels. So it's worth deciding to exercise in the first part of the day if you want to implement it into your life. Be careful with exercise in the second part of the day, as exercise itself causes cortisol levels to rise, and you need to wait a bit for them to fall and the process of recovery to start. We would not want to go to bed with high levels of this hormone, as it will disturb our sleep. Fourth, try to avoid extreme diets, especially those that cut daily caloric intake by 50%. They take a toll on the body's entire hormonal balance, including increased cortisol production, decreased overall mood, and can make it not only more difficult to get rid of obesity, as well as burdened with the inevitable yo-yo effect. Radical diets can be more dangerous to health in the short term than abdominal obesity. Fifth, decide to do any light physical activity. It doesn't have to be any competitive sport. An hour of walking is enough. There is an unimaginable difference in the health of the whole body between doing zero exercise and deliberate exercise 3 times a week for an hour at a time. This affects the entire body, but since we are discussing abdominal obesity, it is worth knowing that abdominal fat is associated with elevated low-grade inflammation. Physical exercise of any kind positively affects inflammatory signaling pathways, thus improving the balance of the endocrine system, reducing inflammation in our bodies. Seriously, you don't have to overthink this. For a start, let it just be a light walk 3 times a week. We have discussed stress, now it's sleep. Poor sleep has even more of an impact on us than exercise. However, reducing the issue of sleep to just obesity and metabolism, there are 3 main substances involved in the whole process: melatonin, leptin, and glucose. Melatonin, otherwise known as the sleep hormone, is produced in the body naturally only when it's dark and only when the conditions for it are favorable, that is, low cortisol levels, dimness. Melatonin triggers, like an orchestra conductor, most of the recovery processes in our body, including glucose metabolism. This, in turn, as we know, is related to the accumulation of fat. All it takes is a disrupted night's sleep, a night's wake-up call, or a sleepless night to lower levels of the leptin hormone, the hormone responsible for the feeling of satiety. This means that sleep deprivation, staying up late at night, sleeping less than 7 hours, is directly related to a strong appetite and hunger sensations. Unfortunately, this is not good news for night owls. Poor night's sleep below 7 hours a night, and optimally 8, starts a whole cascade of harmful processes to our health. The very fact that sleep deprivation worsens the quality of our lives, and this in itself leads to more stress. So how do you take care of your sleep? Sleep regularly for about 8 hours. Try to get an optimal 5, 90-minute REM and NREM cycles during this time. Limit exposure to blue light from smartphone screens or television, as this interferes with melatonin secretion. Try an hour before bedtime not to watch anything on the screens anymore, as you slow down the synthesis of the hormone melatonin. Sleep in a cool, well-ventilated room, quiet, and as dark as possible. Try to have not only a fixed time of getting up, but also of falling asleep, and stick to this rhythm. Do not eat 4 hours before bedtime. It is bad to sleep and digest at the same time. Then you are not fully rested. 2. What happens when we have additional fat in the body? Extra fat on our body is not just an aesthetic problem. Adipose tissue is a huge metabolic problem, as it synthesizes and releases hormones, then inflammatory cells responsible for both positive and negative effects on our body. Of course, when there is an excess of them in our body. Unfortunately, when there is too much adipose tissue, the substances it secretes cause, among other things, a decrease in the diameter of arteries, deterioration of the functioning of the kidneys, inflammatory processes within the liver, and a decrease in insulin sensitivity. The emergence of abdominal obesity is inherently associated with an increase in the risk of cardiovascular disease, including hypoxia, stroke, and heart attack, and hypertension. In addition to type 2 diabetes, dementia, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and unfortunately, some cancers including breast cancer and colon cancer. The development of a large fatty abdomen also affects cardiorespiratory efficiency. In addition to such typical difficulties in daily functioning, it is sometimes unfortunately also associated with the development of sleep apnea. What's even more, as researchers have shown, the combination of the two has implications for the deterioration of cognitive functions, particularly those related to speech. Importantly, in women, there can also be problems getting pregnant due to hormonal disturbances, as well as the risk of premature labor and preeclampsia. Notably, since fat tissue produces hormones, it can also cause menstrual disorders in women. Men, on the other hand, who are watching me, should bear in mind that abdominal obesity increases the risk of developing prostate cancer and also deteriorates semen quality, belly fat. Let's answer the question, why is it much harder to get rid of fat from the abdominal area than evenly distributed fat over our entire body? Thus, we will get the answer to the question, why do the methods mentioned in today's video work? A number of aspects are contributing to this. Indeed, abdominal fat has many more receptors that make it difficult to burn just this fat, unlike fat located, for example, on the buttocks or arms. Therefore, the common misconception that fat and is evenly removed from our bodies during weight loss is not true. Unfortunately, saying goodbye to belly fat is the hardest part. Abdominal obesity is diagnosed not only when we get that first fold, but much earlier. Thus, now the question may arise for many people whether I am affected by this affliction and how exactly to determine it. In order to determine whether we are affected by abdominal obesity, we can calculate at home the so-called WHR, waist-hip ratio parameter, which will allow us to determine with high probability that we have abdominal obesity. How exactly to do it? To determine it, we will need a Taylor's tape measure, a soft meter. Using it, we first measure the circumference of the waist and then the circumference of the hips. To calculate the value of this indicator, we need to divide the value obtained in the waist circumference by the one obtained in the hip circumference. If the value of this indicator in women is above 0.8, while in men it is above 1.0, then we recognize abdominal obesity. 3. How to get rid of abdominal obesity? There are several well-tested and researched methods of losing belly fat. Let's discuss the whole plan of such action. Poor products. one of the basic measures to take is not exercise, but a better selection of what you buy in the store every day. Highly processed foods full of sugars and fat should disappear from your shopping list. Eliminate sweetened beverages from your purchases as well. A large 2015 study found conclusively that consumption of sweetened beverages is associated with a higher risk of general and abdominal obesity in adults. On top of that, we consume sugars, and I talked about the dangers of sugars in another video on our channel. Let's also be wary of sweetened substitutes. To date, there is no clear answer as to whether, for example, the popular sweetener aspartame contributes to abdominal obesity. In the literature, we can find studies that support such a link and studies that do not. However, it is worth bearing in mind still not to exaggerate with sweeteners and not to exceed the daily intake of sweetened beverages over 2 liters due to the effect of sweeteners on insulin resistance that above certain doses begins to resemble the harmful effects of real sugar. Next, products that promote abdominal obesity are processed grains, that is white bread, pasta, and flour meals. In 2020, a huge population-based study in China showed a link between grain diets and abdominal obesity in all participants of the analysis. Alcohol, here I will upset any beer and stronger liquor lovers. Alcohol has no positive effect on our bodies, literally none. In the process, it disrupts our bacterial microflora in the gut, promoting eating disorders. 2021. Analysis on the huge population showed a direct correlation between beer consumption and abdominal obesity. There is no healthy amount of alcohol you can dose yourself with, and if anyone claims otherwise, they are repeating old myths. Alcohol should disappear from the shopping list of anyone who is serious about losing body fat. What products should you start buying to start losing belly fat? A Mediterranean diet, particularly a low-carbohydrate one, should be an amazing source of inspiration for you. The ingredients would include lots of vegetables, fish, seafood, healthy vegetable oils, definitely less baked goods, grain products, sugars, and a complete absence of highly processed ingredients. Another diet that promotes losing a fat belly is any low-carbohydrate diet. That is one which radically reduces the intake of sugars. Keep in mind when doing so that it is in white bread that we take in the most hidden carbohydrates. Low-carbohydrate diets may resemble ketogenic diets. While it is worth remembering that both low-carbohydrate and ketogenic diets should be not only consulted with your doctor before being implemented, but also should not be a lifelong continuous diet, but only one that serves certain specific purposes. For example, losing weight, developing healthy eating, and shopping habits. It is worth remembering at the same time that diets based on calorie reduction are equally effective for weight loss, while these diets are more interesting and tasty, especially Mediterranean flavors. In addition, it may be worthwhile to increase the intake of proteins in different forms. For example, in the form of eggs or cheese, as proteins enhance the feeling of fullness and reduce the desire to reach for snacks. Increasing the amount of protein quantitatively from 15% to as much as 30% of daily intake with the same amount of carbohydrates leads to a reduction in food intake and increases the body's sensitivity to leptin, the satiety hormone, making it easier for us to lose weight. Do not forget about fiber, which, like protein, increases the feeling of satiety. It can be found in vegetables, legumes, fruits, and beans. Fiber slows down the glycemic response, which is important if we have had digestive disorders before. By the way, it reduces the amount of energy we take in from the food we are currently eating, gently helping our weight loss. If we look at the various types of products studied by the scientific world, we find such as apple cider vinegar stabilizes blood glucose levels due to acetic acid being its main element. In a study of obese men, apple cider vinegar was dosed at 15 and then 30 milliliters per day for 12 weeks. This resulted in a reduction in waist circumference and abdominal steatosis. Green tea, the catechins contained therein accelerate the loss of abdominal fat. However, this is not the only drink that supports the path to better health. Coffee. rich in chlorogenic acids, reduces abdominal fat in overweight adults. Coffee in small amounts has numerous health-promoting properties, according to a number of studies from the last decade. However, it is essential that we're talking about coffee in a cup and not a sweet coffee dessert full of sugar and whipped cream. We're talking about sugar-free coffee here. Remember about these vegetables: avocados, carrots, spinach, pumpkin, tomatoes, bell peppers, olives. All of these products inhibit the overgrowth of fat cells and, in general, the formation of fat cells. We discussed a lot about products, however, far too little about digestion itself and basically what happens in our gut. So let's talk specifically about the gut microflora. In order to burn fat well and effectively make the jump to a new diet, it should be correlated with taking care of the gut microflora. The bacteria that live there also have their own preferences. On this list will be products that contain inulin. These would include asparagus, garlic, radicchio, topinambur, boiled potatoes, leek, bananas, and tomatoes. As you can see, it is still quite easy to stick to a Mediterranean-style diet with such ingredients. Studies have shown that we have different types of bacteria in the gut responsible for different processes, including regulating our weight. Lactobacillus bacteria, which we find in fermented foods like kefir, sour pickles, kombucha, kimchi, sauerkraut, and foods prepared with sourdough, have their own positive effects on losing abdominal obesity. 4. It is not just what we eat that is important, but how we eat it. This may come as a surprise to many, but the way we eat also has an impact on the increase or decrease of obesity. In 2018, a study was conducted on a group of more than 50,000 children between the ages of 7 and 17. And what was discovered? Eating quickly, in a rush, is correlated with the appearance of overall obesity. There is a reason why fast food has such a bad reputation, because it's highly processed, sugar-filled food served in a small, bite-sized package that can be ingested quickly after a handful of bites. So avoid eating in a hurry. If you haven't opted for intermittent fasting, be careful about skipping breakfast. A 2019 meta-analysis found that skipping calories from breakfast leads to overconsumption of calories in the evening. This increases the risk of overweight and obesity regardless of the conditions. So if it's not part of a specific intermittent fasting, don't skip breakfast. At the same time, it is worth making them in the manner I suggested earlier, providing a sense of satiety by adding more protein and healthy fats. If you have decided to do intermittent fasting, try the popular 8-16 strategy. Eat during the 8-hour window, then for the following 16 hours, drink no more than tea or beverages without calories. Numerous studies on intermittent fasting indicate its beneficial effects on weight loss and regulating metabolism. In summary, we should eat quietly and slowly. Don't skip breakfast. Look for Mediterranean-like diets. Eliminate sugars, keep a light caloric reduction, and start light exercise. Unfortunately, gaining weight is very easy. Shedding obesity requires a bit of self-discipline, but I'm cheering you on warmly. Subscribe for more.